What would you do if your friend's boyfriend shoved her so hard she fell and bruised her back, then acted like nothing happened? I couldn't just stand by. I'm not a fighter, but I had access to something far more powerful than fists, his entire college record. And with one late-night phone call, I turned his life upside down. If you've ever wished you could bring real justice to someone who hurt a friend, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this isn't just a story about revenge. This is about standing up when no one else would, and watching karma hit harder than any punch could. The year was the late 90s, back when the internet still felt like the Wild West. I was in junior college, juggling classes and a part-time job at the school's administration building. Life was simple, almost boring. I had just moved in with my girlfriend, Lucy, to save on rent. We weren't perfect, but we were happy enough. One Friday night, Lucy mentioned she'd invited a friend from her class for a game night. I didn't think much of it, just another friendly hangout. The night arrived. The doorbell rang, and in walked Sarah, a face I hadn't seen since high school. We weren't close back then, but we'd always gotten along. Seeing her was unexpectedly refreshing, like bumping into an old chapter of your life you'd forgotten you liked. That night turned out to be one of the best we'd had in a long time. Laughter echoed through our tiny living room, pizza boxes piled up on the coffee table, and Sarah fit in seamlessly with our group. From that day on, Sarah became part of our little circle, joining us for dinners, movie nights, and weekend board games. She even brought her boyfriend over a few times. And that's when things started to change. Sarah's boyfriend, let's call him Jay, was off. You know that feeling when someone walks into a room and the air just shifts? That was Jay. He'd sit there, stiff and quiet, arms crossed like a shield. His eyes were sharp, scanning everyone as if we were strangers trespassing in his world. While the rest of us laughed, he stayed silent, the corners of his mouth barely twitching. We tried, to make him feel welcome. Offered him food, asked about his classes, even let him pick movies. But it was like talking to a locked door. He came over 2 or 3 times before finding excuses to avoid us. Honestly, none of us were disappointed. Something about him felt wrong. A month later, my phone buzzed around 10 p.m. It was Lucy, whispering urgently. Sarah's coming over. She's crying. Something happened with Jay. Minutes later, the door opened, and Sarah stepped in, eyes red and swollen, her hands clutching the sleeves of her hoodie as if to keep herself from falling apart. Between broken sobs, she told us what had happened. Jay had accused her of cheating, he didn't say with whom, just spat accusations like poison. When she tried to leave, he blocked her path, shouting, calling her names no one deserves to hear. But what made my blood run cold was when she described trying to push past him, how he shoved her so hard she stumbled over the coffee table, landing hard enough to bruise her lower back and hip. Lucy later told me the bruise was massive. I didn't see it myself, and honestly, I didn't need to. The pain in Sarah's eyes was enough. She insisted it was just an accident, that he'd never hurt her before. But I knew better. Accidents don't come with insults and accusations. As she sat there on our couch, trembling but trying to smile through it, I felt something shift inside me. I'm not a violent man, I've never thrown a punch in my life. But that night, I wanted to. I couldn't get the image out of my head, Sarah, falling backward over that coffee table, alone and scared. Jay had crossed a line. And I couldn't let it slide. That's when I remembered something, my job at the college administration office. I had access to the student database, schedules, fees, even their enrollment status. A plan started forming in the back of my mind, dark and tempting. I waited. Patiently. The deadline to drop or add classes without penalty was just a few days away. On the very last day, after the office quieted down and the sun dipped below the horizon, I made my move. Back then, scheduling changes weren't done online, they had to be handled through a dedicated enrollment phone system. I knew exactly how it worked. With Jay's student ID and information, things I wasn't supposed to use, I called the system. My heart pounded as I followed the prompts, one after another. First, I dropped every single one of his classes. Then, for good measure, I enrolled him in every course I could find with an extra fee attached. Here's the kicker: as a foreign student, Jay was required to stay enrolled in a certain number of units to keep his visa valid. Without them, he could be forced to leave the country. I hung up the phone with shaking hands, adrenaline rushing through me. I wasn't sure if I felt guilty or exhilarated, maybe both. The following Tuesday, Sarah went to her English class, the one she used to share with Jay. She came back later that day, a spark of surprise and relief in her eyes. "You won't believe this," she told Lucy. Jay showed up, but he wasn't on the roster anymore. There was even a new guy sitting in his seat. Apparently, the teacher had noticed the extra student and took roll. When Jay's name wasn't on the list, he tried to argue, but the roster was official. Sarah said she never saw him in that class again. Weeks passed, and Jay disappeared from her life entirely. Sarah felt safer. Happier. Out of curiosity, I checked his file again later. The courses with fees were gone, but he wasn't enrolled in anything else either. I never found out exactly what happened, whether he was expelled, forced to go home, or just gave up. But in my heart, I hoped he learned a lesson: you don't get to hurt people and walk away unscathed. Mess with me, fine. But mess with my friends, and I'll make sure you regret it. Jay thought he was untouchable, until the day he tried to sit in a class that no longer had his name on the roll. Watching him argue helplessly as the teacher shut him down, that was the moment I knew justice had been served. Revenge doesn't always have to come with fists or shouting. Sometimes, the quiet kind, where the guilty never see it coming, is the most satisfying of all. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What's the most satisfying act of karma you've ever seen? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that prove justice always finds a way. Sometimes I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then I'd remember Sarah's bruises, her tears, and I'd feel at peace with what I'd done.